The local charity realized that it had never received a donation from the city's wealthiest lawyer. So, a volunteer decided to visit the lawyer at his luxurious office. The volunteer began the meeting by saying, "Our research shows that even though your annual income exceeds $2 million, you haven't donated a single penny to charity. Won't you like to contribute something to your community?" The lawyer pauses for a moment and then replies, "First, did your research reveal that my mother is suffering from a long, painful illness and has massive medical bills that she can't possibly afford to pay?" Embarrassed, the volunteer mumbles, No, I wasn't aware of that." Secondly, the lawyer continues, "Did your research show that my brother, a disabled veteran, is blind, confined to a wheelchair, and unable to support his wife and 6 children?" The now flustered volunteer starts to stammer an apology but is quickly interrupted. "Thirdly, did your research also uncover that my sister's husband died in a tragic car accident, leaving her penniless with a mortgage and 3 children, one of whom is disabled and another with learning disabilities requiring costly private tutors?" The humiliated volunteer, thoroughly defeated, says, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." And the lawyer says, "So if I didn't give any money to them, what makes you think I'd give any to you?" 1. A man from Stockholm decides to move away from the grind of the big city and buys a house in northern Sweden, out in the middle of nowhere. After having bought his house and gotten settled, a local comes to his house and greets him. "Hi, I'm your closest neighbor, and I want to invite you to a welcoming party." The Stockholmer is pleasantly surprised and agrees. "All right, I'll see you tomorrow. But so that you know, there is going to be a lot of drinking." The Stockholmer thinks for a while, but he has drunk a lot in Stockholm as well. "Not a problem for me." "Fantastic," said the local as he went a bit further away, then stopped and turned around. "You know, there might be some first fighting as well, just so you know." The Stockholmer was a bit shocked by this, but thought he could probably defend himself. "I'll sock someone in the jaw if I have to." "That's the attitude." The local walks a bit further away, but then stops as if he had forgotten one last thing. "Oh yeah, there might be nudity and sex, if you can handle that." The Stockholmer definitely was not expecting that. But hey, he has had sex before. It might be fun. "Sounds interesting, but should I bring anything to the party or dress in a certain way?" "Don't worry about it," said the local. "It's just going to be you and me." 2. A mother and her daughter were out for a walk in their underground city. They were having a lovely day until they came upon a group of protesters outside the Queen's domain. One, with a sign reading, "It's time to go," spotted them and quickly approached. "Excuse me, ma'am, can you spare a moment to take a look at some alarming literature and help support our cause?" He half shouted at her. The mother held up her hand and tried to pass, but the protester blocked her and continued. "It is imperative that we evacuate the colony. Did you know that the dirt we live in and that we raise our children in contains magnesium and aluminum? And God knows what else." Again, she politely but firmly shook her head, pulling her daughter along as the man shouted after her, "You owe it to your little girl to evacuate now." After they gained some distance, the young aunt looked up worriedly at her mother. Was that man right, Mommy? Are we in danger? The mother smiled. No, sweetheart, don't worry. Just because they use big words to try to scare us doesn't mean the anti-vax movement has any ideas what it's talking about. 3. A family of 4 decides that city life doesn't suit them anymore. So they sell their house in the suburbs and purchase a dairy cow ranch. After a week or so, the dad and 2 sons are out fixing the fences when their neighbour drives up the road and stops to introduce himself. How y'all doing? The name's Al, but friends call me Big Al. Are you folks new to the ups and downs of ranching? The father said yes, and the pleasantries continued until Big Al asked if the family ranch had a name. Well, said the father, I wanted to call it the Flying Q. The wife suggested the Lazy A. My older son, Gary, was partial to the Bar J, and the younger one, Steve, liked the Pistol T. So we had a family compromise and named the ranch the Flying Q, Lazy a Bar J Pistol T Family Ranch. That's quite a mouthful, says Big Al. But where's all your cattle? Well, said the father, so far none have survived the branding. 4. A boy from the countryside attended a prestigious university in the city. With his degree, he earned prizes in mathematics and metaphysics. The lad's father came to the college to see his son graduate. Well, Dr. Thompson, asked the old farmer to a professor, what exactly are these mathematics for which my son has won a prize? Mathematics involves the calculation and understanding of figures, replied the professor. Oh, I see, said the old man. He must have gotten that from me. I was always pretty good at counting. Then he asked, and what, Dr. Thompson, might these metaphysics be? Professor Thompson tried to explain that metaphysics deals with expressing the indefinite and dealing with abstract principles like existence, reality, and cause. Oh, I see, said the old man. He'll have to get that fra his mother. She was a blatherin' bitch. 5. A farmer had 3 daughters, and all 3 had dates lined up for the evening. The farmer decided to clean his shotgun for a bit of extra intimidation for the young men arriving to pick them up. At 5 p.m. there was a knock on the door, so the farmer answered it, shotgun in hand. A young man stood on the porch and said, Hi, I'm Eddie. I'm here to pick up Betty. We're going out for some spaghetti. Is she ready? The farmer scratched his chin, then turned around and called for Betty. She zipped down the stairs, kissed her father on the cheek, and was off with Eddie. The farmer continued cleaning his shotgun until 6, when there was another knock at the door. The farmer answered with his shotgun still in hand. Once again, there was a young man on the porch. He said to the farmer, Hey, my name is Joe, and I'm here to pick up Flo. We're going to catch a show. Is she ready to go? The farmer scratched his chin again, then turned and called for Flo. She hurried down the stairs, kissed her father's cheek, and left with Joe. The farmer returned to his chair and resumed cleaning his shotgun. At 7 p.m., there was a rap at the door. The farmer stood up, carrying his shotgun to the door, and answered it where yet another young man was waiting on the porch. The gentleman began. Hello, my name is Chuck. Bang! The farmer shot him. 6. Mr. Johnson boarded a flight to New York City. As he approached his assigned aisle seat, he was startled to find a blonde woman already sitting there. What, what are you doing? Sputtered Mr. Johnson. I specifically booked this seat. Why aren't you sitting in your assigned spot? The blonde woman calmly replied, I'm blonde, I'm clever, and I'm staying in this aisle seat until we touch down in New York City. Frustrated, Mr. Johnson snatched the blonde's ticket out of her hand. It was for the middle seat. Your ticket clearly says you're supposed to be in the middle seat, he exclaimed. I booked this aisle seat because I'm 6'5" and absolutely hate being cramped in an airplane. Meanwhile, you can't be any taller than 5'1". The middle seat should be just fine for you. He showed the blonde his ticket to prove that he had indeed reserved the aisle seat. Once again, the blonde woman replied, I'm blonde, I'm clever, and I'm staying in this aisle seat until we touch down in New York City. You should listen to him, said the woman in the window seat. I used to date a guy who was 6'1", 4 inches shorter than this gentleman, and he always insisted on the aisle seat because he couldn't stand cramped spaces. For the third time, the blonde woman replied, I'm blonde, I'm clever, and I'm staying in this aisle seat until we touch down in New York City. Now at his wit's end, Mr. Johnson called over a nearby flight attendant and explained the situation. The flight attendant leaned down and whispered something in the blonde's ear, and suddenly the blonde sheepishly moved to the middle seat. A relieved Mr. Johnson finally took his aisle seat. After the plane had landed, Mr. Johnson asked the flight attendant, What on earth did you tell that woman? I simply told her that the aisle seat wasn't heading to New York City. 7. A kid hears a word on a playground and doesn't know what it means. He goes up to his teacher and says, Miss, I heard this word, but I'm not sure what it means. Well, what was the word? She asks. Raspberry. The teacher is shocked that the student would say such a thing. That kind of language is not acceptable. Go to the principal's office right now. So the kid goes into the principal's office. The principal asks the kid, I heard you got in trouble for saying something on the playground. Can you tell me what exactly happened? Well, I heard someone use a word on the playground, and I didn't know what it meant, so I asked my teacher what it was, and she told me to see you. The principal, curious what the word was, asks the kid what it was. He said, Raspberry. The principal frowns at the boy. Well, I am going to need to suspend you for talking like that. Since he was suspended, the child walks home and waits for his mother to arrive. When she gets home, she inquires about why he was suspended. Well, I heard someone use a word on the playground, and I didn't know what it meant, so I asked my teacher what it was, and she told me to see the principal, and he suspended me for saying it. That seems a bit drastic. What was the word, son? Raspberry. Oh dear, says the mother. Go to your room. When your father gets home, he is going to deal with you. The kid heads to his room and waits for his father. 30 minutes later, his dad enters the room. Now, what's going on? He asks. Well, I heard someone use a word on the playground, and I didn't know what it meant, playground, so I asked my teacher what it was, and she told me to see the principal, and he suspended me for saying it. I told Mom, and she sent me to my room and told me you would deal with me. Yes, your mother did seem quite upset with you, but you know how women are. They tend to overreact. What was the word, anyway? Raspberry. The father's face turns red. That's it. No child of mine would talk like that. Leave my house this instant. The kid leaves, and a cop sees him wandering the streets. It's a bit late for a young kid like yourself to be out. Why are you here so late? Well, I heard someone use a word on the playground, and I didn't know what it meant. So I asked my teacher what it was, and she told me to see the principal, and he suspended me for saying it. I told Mom, and she sent me to my room and told me that Dad would deal with me. He kicked me out for saying it. What was the word? Raspberry. On go the cuffs, and the kid is in the back seat of the police car. When the time for his trial comes, the judge asks the kid for his side of the story. Well, I heard someone use a word on the playground, and I didn't know what it meant, so I asked my teacher what it was, and she told me to see the principal, and he suspended me for saying it. I told Mom, and she sent me to my room and told me that Dad would deal with me. He kicked me out for saying it. I was found by a cop wandering the streets, and when I told him, he arrested me. I see. Now, what was the word in question? Raspberry, Your Honor, the kid answers. The judge brings the gavel down. Guilty. The plaintiff is subject to 30 years of hard labor. 30 years later, the kid, now a man, is released from his sentence. A curious businessman passing by as he walks out asks what he is in for. Well, I heard someone use a word on the playground, and I didn't know what it meant, playground, so I asked my teacher what it was, and she told me to see the principal, and he suspended me for saying it. I told Mom, and she sent me to my room and told me that Dad would deal with me. He kicked me out for saying it. I was found by a cop wandering the streets, and when I told him, he arrested me. The judge convicted me for 30 years of hard labor. Wow, that's quite a sentence. Would you mind telling me what the word was that did you said 30 years ago? Raspberry. Upon hearing that, the businessman throws a blow at the offender. He's knocked out. Several hours later, when he comes in with a pounding headache, he heads to the doctor across the street. Bam! The man is hit by a bus as he crosses. And the moral of this is to look both ways before crossing the street. 8. A young man and his boss needed to travel to a city 500 miles away. Due to budget cuts enforced by the boss, they opted for a train instead of the much quicker flight. As they entered their train compartment, the young man and his boss found themselves seated across from a stunning 20-something woman and her 60-ish looking mother. Within minutes, the young man and the woman began exchanging quick glances. After about 20 minutes, the young man gathered enough courage to start a flirtatious conversation with her. The mother, who noticed this interaction, gave a stern look at both her daughter and the young man. Not wanting to seem too forward in front of his boss, the young man quieted down, much to the girl's disappointment. An hour later, the train entered a tunnel, plunging the compartment into complete darkness. Suddenly, they all heard the sound of a kiss, followed by the sound of a slap. As the train emerged from the tunnel, all four wore sheepish expressions. The girl was thinking, I'm so glad he kissed me, but I wish my mother hadn't slapped him. The mother was thinking, how dare that young man kiss my daughter? I'm glad she slapped him. He deserved it. The boss was thinking, the guy was really bold to kiss that girl, but I wish the mother hadn't mistakenly slapped me instead of him. The young man was thinking, this is the best day of my life. I got to kiss a beautiful girl and slap my boss all in one go. 9. The Pope takes his first trip to New York City. The Pope-mobile didn't fit on the plane, so he got an armored limousine. The driver, a Catholic, is eager to please, so he asks the Pope if there's anything he can provide, to which the Pope says, "If it's not a bother, I'd actually love to drive. It's the only thing I miss about my pre-Pope days." The driver agrees and hops in the back, and the Pope gets behind the wheel, adjusts the mirror, straightens the seat, and floors it. Barreling 70, 80, or 90 miles per hour out of JFK, like it's nothing, until, of course, he gets pulled over by a pair of cops. The Pope rolls down the window for the younger cop, who goes to his senior and says, I don't know if we can arrest this guy." "Why not?" "I don't even, he's definitely too important." "Oh, so he's with the mayor's office?" "More important." "The governor." "Because we're not state authorities." "More important." "What? Is it the president or something?" "More important." "Well, then who is it?" "I have no idea, but his driver's the Pope." 10. A city slicker goes to visit a cattle ranch in Montana one day. He meets the chief ranch hand, who takes him on a tour of the place. "Here we keep the heifers," he says. "They have this huge pasture to roam and feed until they're ready for market." "Interesting," the city guy says. "What about the bulls?" "They're across the way over there," he says, leading him over to a different pasture. "How come there's only a couple of bulls?" the city slicker asks. "Well, one bull can service a lot of cows, plus they're pretty aggressive, so we only keep the minimum number we need." "So, what do you do with the extra ones?" the city guy asks. "Those are the steers. We neuter 'em. Want to see how we do that?" "Sure." They head over to a barn, where there's a bunch of bull calves milling around in a large pen. "Okay, so Henry, over there, takes the calves and locks them into that cage over there." "Oh my gosh," the city guy says. "Doesn't that hurt?" "No, he just has to make sure he keeps his thumbs out of the way." 11. Once upon a time, in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their effort. He further announced that he would now buy it for $20. This renewed the efforts of the villagers. And they started catching monkeys again. Soon, the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, further, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch it. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys for $50. However, since he had to go to the city on some business, his assistant would now buy on his behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you for $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50 each." The villagers rounded up $35, all their savings, and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man or his assistant, only monkeys everywhere. Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works. 12. A city slicker retires to the country. Following a successful career on Wall St., Jim buys some land out in Nebraska to live a simpler life. He has some of the land cleared and a huge brand new ranch built. Construction crews finish up, landscapers complete the final touches, and he moves the family in. The next morning, he decides to go for a stroll around his property, taking in the sights and sounds of nature. As he's walking along the fence line, listening to cows mooing in the distance from the other side of the fence, watching bees and butterflies flying around doing their stuff, and thinking life's just great here, he hears a clucking noise coming from just up ahead. He slows his pace as the clucking gets louder so as not to disturb whatever is going on. After walking another 10 or 15 feet, an egg rolls underneath the fence and lands right in his path. Excitedly, he bends down, picks up the egg, and mutters out loud, "Wow! This is so cool! I'm going to have this for breakfast." A head pops up from the other side of the fence, and he hears, "Howdy, you must be the new neighbor. Can you give me my egg back?" Jim says, "It's on my land. It's my egg, and I'm going to enjoy it." The farmer replies, "My chicken laid that egg, so it's my egg." Jim replies, "My land, my egg." The farmer replies, "My chicken, my egg." They go back and forth. Then the farmer says, "You're obviously not from around these parts, but when we have a dispute here, we have a way to settle it." Jim says, "Okay, go ahead and explain." The farmer says, "This is how it goes. I kick you in the balls, and then you kick me in the balls. We keep taking turns until one of us gives up. Whichever one of us can't take it anymore loses." Jim says, "Right then, let's go." The farmer hops over the fence and they square up against each other. Jim braces and the farmer takes 2 steps back, then leans in and delivers a direct hit. Jim falls to the ground and retches, clutching his groin and rolling around in the dirt. After around 4 or 5 minutes, Jim finds his feet and says, "Okay, bud, my turn now." The farmer replies, "You can keep the egg." 13. I matched with a Tinder profile that had no photos. We chatted for a while. She was witty and charming, so I asked her out. She agreed. I'm not expecting much, probably 400 little bees, but she opened the door, this petite blonde, with a head full of curls and all the right curves in all the right places. We exchanged real names, and I asked her what she did for work. She replied, "I'm a Sunday school teacher." Now, I've never dated a Christian girl before, but I'm open-minded, so I'm taking her to the second best restaurant I know. I pull out a joint of my best weed and ask if she'd like a puff. She gasps, "Heavens no! What would I tell my Sunday school kids?" Well, some people smoke, some don't, so I shrugged it off. We go to the restaurant. I order a steak, and she gets the lobster. I order the second most expensive bottle of wine on the menu. But when the waitress brings it, she says she doesn't drink. I'm stunned. You don't drink. What would I tell my Sunday school kids? We have a great time, laughing at each other's jokes, but I know this is a bust as I drink that overpriced bottle by myself. As I'm driving her home, I pass a cheap hotel and, figuring I have nothing to lose, ask her, "Want to get a room and knock boots?" She says, "I thought you'd never ask." I'm like, "Really? What will you tell your Sunday school kids?" She says, "The same thing I tell them every week. You don't have to drink or smoke to have a good time." 14. There was an American wrestler from Texas named John, who throughout his high school career had never lost a match. As he continued into college, he remained undefeated. He became a national hero and a symbol of American might. Rumors began to spread of a Russian wrestler who was fierce and unstoppable. As each wrestler's legend grew, a match was set between the two, America versus Russia. The showdown would be held in Texas. John began training relentlessly. Every day his coach would warn him, "This Russian has a move called the Mongolian Death Grip. No one has ever escaped the Mongolian Death Grip. Do not let him get you in the Mongolian Death Grip." The day of the match finally arrived. Just before stepping onto the mat in front of the roaring crowd, the coach repeated, "Whatever you do, don't let him get you in the Mongolian Death Grip. No one has ever escaped it." 4 seconds into the match, the Russian had John locked in the Mongolian Death Grip. The coach buried his face in his hands and cursed John for not heeding his warning. All of a sudden, he heard the crowd erupt in a chant of "USA! USA! USA!" He looked up and saw the Russian pinned by John. The coach rushed over to John and sheepishly admitted, "I didn't see it. Once he had you in the Mongolian Death Grip, I couldn't watch. How on earth did you escape?" Breathing heavily, John replied, "Well, coach, that Russian twisted me in ways I never thought possible. I was wincing in pain when I opened my eyes, and right in front of me were 2 tails. So I bit them." "What?" exclaimed the coach. "John, I don't think that's legal. You could be disqualified." "I don't know about that, coach, but I'll tell you one thing. You have no idea how strong you are until you bite your own balls."